Movies, soundtracks. So, I did a soundtrack tag for Beth at B-Side Records, and I really enjoyed it. I got a good response. So, I promised I was going to do my CD soundtrack. I have a shitload. Okay, I'm going to point this down so you can see. I have CDs in these drawers. Not all of them, not like the ones behind me, but I have a little bit other section of CDs, and I have a ton. Let's see, there's like 36, 90, I don't know how many. Look. These and those, just to give you a physical idea what this is about. I'm gonna go through these really fast, and I might skip some and not really talk a lot about them, but just to showcase some CDs. I love soundtracks. I love scores a lot, and I think you all know, I don't have to tell you this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Difference between scores and soundtracks. There's a whole thing, like take the 80s. All the Hughes films, Pretty in Pink and those. Takes a lot of like hipster, new with the current du jour of songs and sticks them on a soundtrack, like Forrest Gump or even Easy Rider from the late '69, which is probably one of the first of the rock and roll comp soundtracks. Take a lot of independent or individual rock songs and stick them on a soundtrack and sell a shitload of records. So I'm going to go through these. In the background I'm playing, this is a different, I showed this in the other video. This is Blow Up. Soundtrack by Herbie Hancock, Yardbirds are on one cut. Train Kept a Rollin'. There's also, anyway, love this soundtrack. Different cover than the LP. So I'll put that aside, and I'm just going to go through these really quick. A favorite of mine, Absolute Beginners. This is a pretty cool film. I saw a preview at the San Francisco Film Festival of this. Julian Temple, who was a director of a lot of rock videos, a lot of music videos, MTV style, directed this film. David Bowie's in it. There's a segment with Ray Davis from the Kinks. Patsy Kensick is in it, but it's on the music. It's an amazing soundtrack, and really the first half of this film is great. But it's got David Bowie, Sade, Style Council, Gil Evans. Gil Evans did some of the music for this movie as well. Sam Gallard, Jerry Dammers. Anyway, great soundtrack. Here's three things of Woody Allen. These are comps. So there's Woody Allen movies, and this has everything from George Gershwin to Billy Strayhorn to Mendelssohn, the classical music, all his movies. More movie music from Radio Days, Hannah and Her Sisters, and the likes. You know, I'm a Woody Allen fan. There's a great video here of Woody Allen movies that the archivist and I did. More music, Stardust Memories, Radio Days, and of course, classical Woody Allen. This is from the Columbia Masterworks series. This has Love and Death, Manhattan, Another Woman, Midsummer Night's Dream, Shadows and Fall, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Classical music from the great Masterworks Columbia Records section. Amelie, one of the best French films of the early 2000s. This is a really wonderful soundtrack too. So the soundtrack to Amelie, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who has made a lot of great French cinema and crossed over into the American genre. I think he made the fourth Alien movie, which didn't get a lot of great airplay. Sigourney Weaver with Winona Ryder, but a great visualist, and this is a great soundtrack and an amazing motion picture. Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Nick Cave and Warren Ellis from The Bad Seeds, from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. An amazing soundtrack. One of the best films I know of in the last 10, 15 years or so. Slow moving, but beautifully shot. Amazing cinematography and a beautiful, beautiful soundtrack. Austin Powers, what can I say? Austin Powers. Austin Powers. Avalon. Okay, I pick up every soundtrack that Randy Newman composed. Barry Levinson directed Avalon. a gorgeous film. Randy Newman scored a lot of his music. A lot of people don't know, Randy Newman, Short People, and Leave Your Hat On. All those songs is an amazing. Obviously, you also know him from the Toy Story movies. You Got a Friend in Me. Great composer. He's from the wonderful family of the Newmans. His great uncle is Alfred Newman, who composed a lot of work for Warner Brothers and a lot of Hollywood legacy family, the Newmans. But Randy Newman's also a great score meister and does great soundtrack. So Avalon, cool film, great score. Randy Newman also did Awakenings, interesting film, not a great film, but it's with, let's see, isn't this the one, Awakenings, I think it is Robert De Niro, but also Robin Williams, Awakenings by Barry Levinson, another Barry Levinson film. Batman, Tim Burton film, music by Prince. The score of Batman, and this is the great score by, what's his name? I just showed a whole thing on him. The guy from Oingo Boingo. They have this kind of stuff you can't even friggin' read. I'll think of it later, but this is the score from Batman. Batman Returns as well. Danny Elfman, there you go. See, I needed just larger type. I love the Danny Elfman stuff. Gorgeous. Being John Malkovich, a favorite film of mine. Score composed by Carter Burwell. This is a beautiful soundtrack as well. Being John Malkovich. This is one outrageous friggin' film. I love this movie. Interesting movie. Big Lebowski. What Condition My Condition Is In. The Coen brothers make great soundtracks. This is probably compiled by, never mind. Anyway, just a collection of songs. It's got Ima Sumac. I love Ima Sumac. She has 16 octave voice, Elvis Costello songs, Captain Beefheart, Bob Dylan, The Man in Me, Meredith Monk, The Gypsy Kings, Henry Mancini. Great soundtrack. Black Orpheus, I showed that in the other video, one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. Very rhythmic, very lo-fi, but in a beautiful way. I love this movie and I love this soundtrack, Black Orpheus. And yes, Beth, there's a record, which was the third record of Vince Guaraldi, impressions of Black Orpheus, not from the movie, but impressions of it. Almost kind of like later, the things like Madonna doing Inspired By. But that is a great album by Vince Guaraldi. Best of Bond. There's been several of these over the years because they keep keeping up. This is a double CD of the Bond themes, the great Bond themes from Goldfinger, from Shirley Bassey, James Bond, to Paul McCartney, Live and Let Die, to Matt Monro, to Nancy Sinatra, You Only Live Twice, to Aha, and to GoldenEye, and Sheryl Crow, Tomorrow Never Dies. I forgot Sheryl Crow did a Bond film. Braveheart, cool soundtrack. James Horner soundtrack, really good soundtrack. You gotta have a Casablanca. I don't care. One of the best movies ever made, Casablanca. It's got Dooley Wilson singing as time goes by. But beautiful, the epic Warner Brothers years from the 1940s. Again, Danny Elfman, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Willy Wonka, a sequel, not a sequel, but a remake by great Tim Burton. Philip Glass, okay. I'm sorry, this is not Philip Glass. This is, never mind. Whatever. Chef. I want to eat your big salty balls. South Park. My son got me into this and I fucking love it. South Park. Chef Aid. Chef Aid, Isaac Hayes. That's another story. Oh God, this is a gorgeous. Okay, this is the same director This is City of Lost Children, one of the most beautiful films. I suggest highly you see this film. It's surreal, it's beautiful, and this soundtrack is really amazing. Oh, it's actually I didn't realize. It's Angelo Badalamenti composed the soundtrack to this, who worked with all the David Lynch later films from Twin Peaks on. Beautiful, beautiful soundtrack. Clockwork Orange, we discussed that. Combination of Walter, Wendy, Carlos, and others. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Rossini, Singing in the Rain. Jack White and Company, Cold Mountain, Alison Krauss, Jack White, Gabriel Yared, T-Bone Burnett put this together. Really great soundtrack. Cold Mountain. Crumb, the documentary about Crumb. This is a great documentary. I highly suggest it. He's the artist, the illustrator, did the cover of Big Brother and the Holding Company's record. The one with he did the cover, the cartoons on the cover. He did Keep on Truckin', all the great stuff, Fritz the Cat, everything. He's also a banjo player and does sort of traditional music, jazz, bluesy stuff. Crumb. This is a great film, and this is cool. A lot of ragtime stuff too. Great soundtrack and a great documentary on Crumb. He sold his sketchbooks. He actually traded all his sketchbooks for a house in the south of France, and so he left the States. You should watch that. The Crying Game. This is a cool soundtrack too. I don't remember exactly much about it, but Crying Game, favorite of mine. I've mentioned Bernard Herrmann, who did a lot of scores for Hitchcock films. This is an amazing soundtrack. The Day the Earth Stood Still with Mark Rennie. Klaatu Barada Nikto. This is a later recording of it by Joel McNeely. So this is not the original score, but a great score of that soundtrack. A beautiful soundtrack. Theremins used in it. Wonderful. Okay, here's a twofer. Dead Man Walking. The songs and the score. Now, I wasn't always a huge Pearl Jam fan, but when Eddie Vedder did the score on some of this with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, I think this is the better of the two. It's really surreal, very ethnic. Ethnic sounds so kind of tacky, but you know what I mean, world music-y. This is great songs, and it has opening song Dead Man Walking by Bruce Springsteen, Johnny Cash, Suzanne Vega, Lyle Lovett, Michelle Shocked, Tom Waits, Steve Earle, Patti Smith. Both of these are great, and I just love this stuff. I forgot about those. Music inspired by, or is this the music inspired by version? Madonna. Oh, this is actually the score. This is probably the score of Dick Tracy. Yeah, this is a movie directed by Warren Beatty that Madonna's in. Pretty good. A great overview box set. The great songs from Walt Disney, Whistle While You Work, Someday My Prince Will Come. All the great songs for 40 years or 50 years of Walt Disney musicals. Kind of great collection. This is I think this is T-Bone Burnett also. Yeah, T-Bone Burnett is a great arranger. You might know him, who curated Oh Brother Where Art Thou. But this is Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood. And there's Jimmy Reed blues stuff. Anne Savoy's on here. Jimmy Reed, Taj Mahal, Bob Dylan, Tony Bennett, Mahalia Jackson, the great gospel singer, Slim Harpo, Ray Charles, Jimmy Reed. This is an amazing collection. That's the thing about soundtracks. You will get a lot of music you may not have discovered otherwise. And so get these soundtracks. You probably can get them cheap on compact disc now. And then it'll make you discover other things and go for the full albums of this. Okay, one of the great things, conducted by Bill Lee and Branford Marsalis, Do the Right Thing. The Spike Lee film, The Spike Lee Joint. Great jazzy, funky soundtrack. Easy Rider, I've said this before, probably the first of the great rock and roll soundtracks. Don't bogart that joint, my friend. Music inspired by. I love when they say inspired by, because it's not necessarily music in the movie, but Eminem, 8 Miles, great film, a great introduction for a lot of people who aren't into rap music. But this was a game changer too. With it's got Eminem, 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Macy Gray, Gangsta, Eminem. Really great soundtrack. This is great. End of Violence. One of my favorite directors is Wim Wenders, who did American Friend. Wim Wenders also did Paris, Texas. End of the World as We Know It. Or End of Violence. Excuse me. I'm sorry. And U2's on here. Ry Cooder's on here. And Tom Waits. DJ Shadow. Great soundtrack. Another one. Oh, this is great. I'm saying great a lot, don't I? Well, this stuff is great. I wouldn't have these in my collection if they weren't any good. A favorite cult film of mine is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. An amazing soundtrack as well. John Bryan, who produced and worked with Fiona Apple, LA artist, little of the avant-garde side. ELO, Mr. Blue Sky is on here, which is kind of a cool thing. That song really got a great resurgence, but I think this is great. You know, I tell you, aside from that first, I'm trying to think of the name of that movie that Madonna was in, the best thing Madonna ever did was this, Evita. She nailed this, and this is a great movie directed by Alan Parker. I love this movie. Love it. Antonio Banderas, Madonna, Jonathan Pryce. Beautiful movie directed by Alan Parker. Great soundtrack, and the vocal performances of this. Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. Evita, about Eva Peron. Love the soundtrack, and I love the movie. Again, more Danny Elfman. Oh, I showed these in my other video. Just a collection of Danny Elfman, the great composer. Used to be in Oingo Boingo. Minimal at its outrageous piano tones with a Chris Isaak song thrown in. Stanley Kubrick is amongst my favorite director who puts together interesting soundtracks. They're really out there. I showed 2001 and Clockwork Orange. Barry Lyndon uses The Chieftains. Again, I'm a big cinephile, and I love scores and soundtracks to music. So Eyes Wide Shut. And the woman, what's her name here? I'm blanking on her name. But she did this minimal piano, like literally one note. That's kind of wild. Gorgeous soundtrack. Beautiful. This film was shot by Stanley Kubrick and finished posthumously by the director Sidney Pollack. So, you know, some people don't like this movie. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, while they're married, intense sexual. Well, I think it's an interesting movie. It's not totally successful, but it's the more I watch this movie, the more I think it's rather interesting. One of the great soundtracks of classical music of all time is Fantasia. My father brought me to see a reissue of this in the 60s when I was a little kid. It's just gorgeous. I mean, the music he uses, I mean, there's Beethoven, there's Mussorgsky, Franz Schubert, the Nutcracker Suite, Bach. It's an amazing animation showcasing some of the best classical pieces of all time. The Sorcerer's Apprentice with Mickey Mouse. It's just a beautiful film, beautiful animation. I think everyone needs to get this. Fantamus, the director's cut, some of the Italian wild soundtracks of pretty creepy cinema. Going back to Wim Wenders, Far Away So Close. Not a great film, a sort of sequel to Wings of Desire, which you'll see here later. It's one of my favorites. The Fugitive, the TV show from the 60s with David Jensen. Probably some of you youngsters will know the Harrison Ford movie version of that. the Gilmore Girls. I just got this because I'm a big fan of Sam Phillips, and Sam Phillips, she wrote a lot of the music and cues for this, but it's got John Lennon on here, Oh My Love, it's got the Shins, the Free Design, Big Star, Bjork. I had to get it because of my Beatle connection. This is a beautiful soundtrack. Gladiator, you know Gladiator won Best Picture, Best Actor, directed by the great Ridley Scott. Hans Zimmer with Lisa Gerard from Dead Can't Dance. Amazing vocals. A great soundtrack, Goodfellas, the Scorsese film. It's got Layla, it's got Sunshine of Your Love, it's got Manish Boy, Muddy Waters, Beyond the Sea, Bobby Darin. Scorsese is someone who really uses music well too. He's a big rock fan. You probably know that he directed The Last Waltz, and he directed the documentaries on Dylan and George Harrison, and he uses rock. He's a big rock fan. This is a Broadway cast. I prefer this than the movie. I don't really like the movie of Hair, but I love the Broadway score of Hair. Okay, I said Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann film scores. This has everything from Taxi Driver to Psycho, to The Wrong Man by Hitchcock, Citizen, I forgot he did Citizen Kane. Wow, I don't think I realized that. North by Northwest, I just watched that recently. If you haven't seen North by Northwest by Alfred Hitchcock, you need to watch that like right away. Oh, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous film. I'm so consistent, aren't I? Henry and June. This is directed by Philip Kaufman, who lived in the Bay Area. He's a great director. This was controversial, rated almost quite X. Sexy fucking film. Beautiful film. He directed The Right Stuff also, but Henry and June, very Frenchy. It's about, was about Henry Miller. Anyway, Henry Miller, the writer. Beautiful film. Indian Runner, I think Ray Cooder. Traffic is on here. Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver, Creedence Clearwater. Jack Nitzsche produced this, who has worked quite a lot with Neil Young. Indian, as I remember, and David Lindley's on here as well. A great guitar player and a composer. I think this is directed by Sean Penn. Am I right about that? I think Sean Penn directed this movie. Not a great movie, but a fucking great soundtrack. Heaven's Prisoner. I got a promo of this. Buddy Guy, B.B. King, a lot of blues stuff. And it's with, it's got The Hoax, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Double Trouble. And it's, Alec Baldwin's in it. I don't even remember the movie. This is kind of a cool overview of Hitchcock from the TV show that Alfred Hitchcock presents. And music from Alfred Hitchcock, more Alfred Hitchcock presents. Bernard Herrmann, this is the LA Philharmonic doing scores from some of Bernard Herrmann's films. A really great classical piece of music and a great record, more of a contemporary versions of last 15, 20 years of scores of Hitchcock. The Hot Spot. This is interesting. This is a cool soundtrack. I think, did Dennis Hopper direct this? Music composed by Jack Nitzsche. It's got John Lee Hooker, Miles Davis, Taj Mahal, Tim Drummond, Roy Rogers, Bradford Ellis. And I think this was directed by the actor Dennis Hopper. Interesting film, not a great film, but a really cool soundtrack. I'm Not There. How many actors can play Bob Dylan well? But you know who does it amazingly? First of all, it's got Eddie Vedder doing All on the Watchtower. It's got Sonic Youth, Richie Havens, Yola Tango, John Doe. This is an amazing collection. Mason Jennings, Calexico with Charlotte Gainsbourg. I forgot how great this, I think it's a double CD as I recall. Todd Haynes film. There's all these little segments. Interesting film. A lot of people didn't like this film, but I thought it was really interesting. It's got I think the most revelatory, is that a word? Is Kate Blanchett playing Bob Dylan in a segment. Beautiful, beautiful film. Artie. Al Jolson, Mammy Al Jolson, How I Love You. Great overview of Al Jolson soundtracks. The Jungle Book, the original Jungle Book, original soundtrack from the animated classic. This is one of my favorite of the Disney films when I was a kid growing up. Kansas City, Robert Altman film, very jazzy, pretty good soundtrack. Of course, Kill Bill Volume 1, 2. I mean, Tarantino soundtracks are just amazing. So, you know it. If you don't, look it up. Kill Bill Volume 2. Another film that Thibaut Burnett produced, and a Coen Brothers film that wasn't one of his best, but Tom Hanks is in it. It's called The Lady Killers. Kind of gospel, kind of mystery, but interesting soundtrack. This is one of the weaker of the Coen Brothers films, but I do like the soundtrack. The Last Time I Committed Suicide. Oh, this is an amazing soundtrack. This has Art Blakey, Miles Davis, Ella Fitzgerald, Charlie Mingus, Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, Diana Reeves, and Cassandra Wilson, and an amazing jazz collection. Am I gonna be able to go through these? You're gonna watch this. We're only 26 minutes. Lethal Weapon 2. Is this the one with George Harrison? I think I got, yeah, Cheer Down, George Harrison song that at the time was never on any George Harrison record, so I had to get it because of George Harrison. Overall, not a great soundtrack, but Beatle connection. Lord of the Rings. Oh, this is amazing. I did get the vinyl during Record Store Day, last year before. Lost in Translation, Sofia Coppola's. What a wonderful film. I was in Birmingham, Michigan, outside of Detroit one night working, and I was alone doing a job. That sounds bad. And I went to see this movie, and I don't think people in the theater got this movie. I was in there, and I think it was like 6 people in the theater on a weeknight, and I loved this movie. It's got Jesus and Mary Chain, My Bloody Valentine, Kevin Shields. Great soundtrack. Great film directed by Sofia Coppola. Bill Murray. Beautiful movie. It was really romantic without being overtly romantic. I just love it. Lost Highway. David Lynch stuff is creepy. This has actually themes in it, songs. Again, the producer of this was Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails. Bizarre film. Okay, this is a great soundtrack. This is Bertolucci film. Bertolucci film Little Buddha. Chris Isaak was in this. It's about this family. I think it's Bridget Fonda and Chris Isaak. They have a son that may be the next Buddha. Oh, Ryuichi Sakamoto did the soundtrack. Great Japanese composer. Some stuff avant-garde. He's done some things with... he's done a lot of great music. This is an amazing, gorgeous soundtrack about reincarnation, who is the next Buddha. The film's interesting. It's not a movie that people think of when they think of Martin Scorsese. The Mambo Kings. This is really cool. Cuban Mambo. It's got Linda Ronstadt's on here too. Tita Puente, the Mambo All Stars, and Linda Ronstadt. Antonio Banderas is in it. And Armando Sante, these brothers, music club, a little gangsta, but gorgeous soundtrack. Of course, A Mighty Wind, the great folk mockumentary of folk music. Man on the Moon. Man on the Moon about Andy Kaufman, directed by, what's his name, who did Amadeus, and he did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest from Czechoslovakia. You're yelling at his name at the screen right now. Milos Forman. Cool movie. Henry Mancini's greatest hits. He wrote The Pink Panther. He wrote, Days of Wine and Roses, The Elephant Walk from Hatari, Mr. Lucky, Peter Gunn. Okay, this is one that you should get. You who like different music or like soundtrack music, and Beth, I'm talking to you. You need a best of Henry Mancini. I already showed Manhattan, Gershwin, Woody Allen. Great opera, Match Point. One of the great later, I think 2007, Woody Allen movies. Great opera, an amazing score, amazing soundtrack. It's got Enrico Caruso, opera music. What's great about this kind of stuff, it turns you on to music you would not normally listen to. Most of us here, maybe, with some exceptions, don't go out and buy an opera record, but having these interludes and having these arias of opera is really amazing, so I'm highly suggesting this. The Matrix. I brought my son the night this opened. I think he was 9 years old, and it was the Friday night it opened. It's a pretty violent film. The woman next to me, looks at me and says, "Are you sure you should bring that boy that age to watch this kind of violence?" My son's great. He's 29 years old now. That means this movie is 20 years old now. The Matrix. Mishima, Philip Glass soundtrack. And a gorgeous movie. Not for everyone. A little surreal. Mishima is this Japanese artist, Japanese writer who ended up committing harikari, which is suicide. This is done in a really interesting way, illustrating his life through his stories. And this is, Philip Glass did an amazing soundtrack, and love this movie. Artsy, so not for everybody, but a really gorgeous soundtrack. If you like Philip Glass and minimalist music. Okay, I said this before, I'm a big, maybe I didn't say this before, but I'm a Morricone fan. Morricone did The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, the spaghetti westerns, Italian composer. I have a bunch of overview soundtracks. So this is The Mission he did. De Niro's in this movie, orchestrated this movie. But anything from Morricone, I will pick up. These collections of Morricone are really beautiful. The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, that whistling song. This is I like this movie a lot. The Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere and Laura Linney. It's kind of the Tom and Dandy, the kind of new wavy electronic. I don't even know, but I love this soundtrack. So very unusual. This is a great movie to check out. While you're sitting at home, stuck at home, on quarantine, check this movie out. Again, Mulholland Drive. Anything by David Lynch. And this is probably Badalamenti as well. Love this movie. Love the soundtrack. This is cool. Naked Lunch. Howard Shore did the soundtrack, but it also has some Ornette Coleman on here. Pretty wild stuff. This is, what's the director on this? Yardbirds. Anyway, surreal film based on The Naked Lunch, the book by William Burroughs. I'm blanking out right now. Oh Brother What, that one of the great country bluegrass roots soundtracks of all time. Put together by T-Bone Burnett. Now, Oliver Stone, one of the most overly top violent movies. I'm not a really big fan of this movie, but it's a great soundtrack. Trent Reznor again, Nine Inch Nails and others produced this, put it together. Cool, out there soundtrack with dialogue. intense soundtrack. One of the great soundtracks, early 1969, I believe, or 70. Ry Cooder's on it, Randy Newman's on it, Jack Nitzsche produced it. Performance, the great song Memo from Turner with Ry Cooder on the great bottleneck guitar and Mick Jagger singing, much better than the demo version the Rolling Stones did. Gone, Dead Train is on here, a cool song by Randy Newman as well. I showed Phantom Thread, I love this, and this is Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead. Cool movie, great soundtrack. Okay, Psycho. This is the remake of Psycho. Is it Todd Haynes that directed this? I forgot. Danny Elfman, plus it has Teddy Thompson doing a great version of the song Psycho. Teddy Thompson is the son of Richard Thompson. This is a frame-by-frame remake of Psycho. Why bother? Interesting experiment, but cool soundtrack. Philadelphia, Tom Hanks Academy Award winning role, and this is again conducted by Howard Shore, but it's got the song Philadelphia by Neil Young and Streets of Philadelphia by Bruce Springsteen, which I believe probably won an Oscar. Jonathan Demme directed this film. Great director Jonathan Demme, did Silence of the Lambs, did the Talking Heads movie. Okay, I showed it before, Nino Rota. Nino Rota did a lot of Fellini films. Anything you can get by Nino Rota. Beautiful Italian composer, Italian scores. Around Midnight, the film that Dexter Gordon is in. All these jazz artists in it. Not a great film, but interesting because all the great jazz artists are there. Photographed in the south of France in the late 80s. Interesting film, but the soundtrack's better than the movie. A Scanner Darkly, it's rotoscope film, so it's got an animation based on real imagery. Kind of a cool soundtrack. The Score, 20 cool soundtracks from the producers of Mojo. This is kind of a 70s kind of overview. Oh, one of my favorites, Joseph Conrad's The Secret Agent, and this is Philip Glass. It's a classical 20th century piece by Philip Glass, an amazing score. I never saw the movie, but this is an amazing soundtrack. If you like minimalist, if you like Philip Glass, repetitive. If you know what I just said, that means you know Philip Glass. If you don't, it's repetitive, but really, really good. Oh, Shelter in Sky, another great Bertolucci film. Not a great film, but gorgeously photographed and a beautiful soundtrack. I have 2 more bins left. You want to watch this, you just want to see. Shine, cool piano movie. He won Best Actor for this movie. This is a really great soundtrack, very classical, very interesting. Oh, can I have some of those taters? Sling Blade. It took Billy Bob Thornton, a B actor, a C actor, a 2-bit actor, to write his own script and to create his own film and direct his own film. An incredible film, a nice soundtrack. Daniel Lanois put it together, and the song The Maker on this is a fantastic song. Google right now and listen to Daniel Lanois' The Maker. You know Daniel Lanois, he produced one Neil Young record, Lanois. He produced from the middle period with Eno, U2 records, but a great composer. Sopranos. Sopranos Volume 2, songs that were used on the TV show, include that great opening song. Spamalot, Monty Python. The Spy Who Shagged Me, more Austin Powers. Madonna's on here. The Who, R.E.M., Lenny Kravitz. The usual rubbish. Now, Carl Stalling projects. These are great. These are songs from the Warner Brothers cartoons of the 40s, 50s, 60s. Great soundtracks. Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner. Just an amazing, 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 amazing stuff. I love this stuff. Short Bits, What's Up Doc. You know, anybody who watched cartoons when they were a kid knows this music. Great stuff. Star Wars: A New Hope. You know, I hate to say it, I saw Star Wars, a preview at the first time it came out in 1976. We got it because I worked in a record store and we got passes. I'm not a Star Wars fan. I'm sorry. The Essential, Max Steiner. Max Steiner, one of the great composers of the 50s, or 30s, 40s, 50s. King Kong, Now Voyager, Caine Mutiny, the great Warner Brothers films of the 30s and 40s. Max Steiner. You need to know Max Steiner. Max Steiner's name if you're going to get into soundtracks and scores from famous Hollywood motion pictures. A Summer Place, Sergeant York, The Searchers. These might be, I think these are probably re-recordings of Max Steiner. The Straight Story, More Badalamenti. This is the straightest movie in a cool way that David Lynch ever directed. The Straight Story. Tank Girl, post-punk, or what do you call it, steampunk. Kind of a fun movie. Jacques Tati, all these French soundtracks of the 50s, 60s, kind of a cool overview. Taxi Driver, one of the later Bernard Herrmann scores he did. One of the last things he did for Martin Scorsese for the Taxi Driver. Gorgeous, gorgeous soundtrack. There Will Be Blood, again another Greenwood score from with Daniel Day-Lewis in this, and this is the Paul Tom Anderson film based on Greenwood from Radiohead did this score. Third Man, the zither instrument. Third Man theme is so amazing. I have a couple of variations of Third Man. Orson Welles film with Joseph Cotten, an amazing noir spy film. One of my favorite films and worth checking out. 32 short films of Glenn Gould, and this is basically one actor playing these 32 short films about Glenn Gould, the composer and piano player, and it's his music obviously throughout it. Interesting film. Tout le Matisse du Monde. French film with Gerard Depardieu, an amazing soundtrack, French film. What can I say about that? I showed this before, one of my all-time favorite films, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Twin Peaks, To the End of the World, Wim Wenders collection including U2 and other artists. This is a great soundtrack. This is also Morricone, The Untouchables with Kevin Costner, the movie version. Really great, strong soundtrack. And the last bin, we're down in, God, this is going to be 45 minutes, okay. Vanilla Sky, Paul McCartney collection, the song Vanilla Sky. Cameron Crowe directed it, who did Almost Famous, writer for Rolling Stone. This is a kind of a cult film. I like this movie. Cameron Crowe, or what's her name? Paul McCartney's in here, Peter Gabriel's on here, Radiohead, R.E.M., Red House Painters, Josh Rouse, but the Monkees, Porpoise Song from their movie Head, Jeff Buckley, Sugaroo. I'm skipping John Williams, Star Wars, sorry. Okay, one of my all-time favorite films, artsy film about angels. There was a shitty fucking remake with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, but Wings of Desire. I love the soundtrack. It's very classical. Bruno Ganz is in it. Bruno Ganz, if you ever watch those memes of Hitler in the bunker, that's Bruno Ganz. Dennis Hopper. I'm sorry, not Dennis Hopper. Anyway, gorgeous soundtrack. Nick Cave plays in this. His band is in a performance. This is a really beautiful, very string arrangements, classical, somewhat avant-garde, but really great. The Wizard of Oz, what can I say? We're off to see the Wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. West Side Story, this is the Broadway version, not the soundtrack. One of my favorite scores of all time. Woodstock. Now, I've been talking about this lately. Wonder Boys. This is an amazing soundtrack. The song Things Have Changed. Bob Dylan gave this film, wrote it for the film, or gave it for the soundtrack, won an Oscar or a Grammy. Great. One of the best singles Dylan's ever done. Tom Rush, Buffalo Springfield, Dylan, Tim Hardin, Clarence Carter, a couple Bob Dylan tracks. John Lennon, Watching the River Flow, Van Morrison, Philosopher's Stone. Really good soundtrack. Cool film. I like this film. Good film. I got a few different X-Files soundtracks, scores, rock and roll versions inspired by X-Files. You know X-Files. I'm a big X-Files fan. Almost to the end. Xena. I have a big crush on Xena, Lucy Lawless, Warrior Princess. Joe LaCuda, the soundtrack, LaDuca, soundtracks he did for Xena. And lastly, which I showed in my other video, Zabriskie Point. Okay, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to sleep. Soundtracks, those are all my CD soundtracks, more or less. I might have skipped a couple. Mazzy Loves You. Watch these movies. I love watching these movies. Mazzy Loves You.